For today's critical thought, we're returning to the topic when it comes to pacing in a video game, and how do you structure a game to let the player know that there's good stuff coming and not to quit long before they get to it. As we've talked about plenty of times here on the channel, progression is a very powerful motivator when it comes to keeping someone invested in a game. On the low end of the scale, we can talk about progression in terms of pure abstraction. You go from 5 points of health to 10 points of health, 30 points of damage to 60, level 1 to 80 to 1000, 9999999, and so on. On the high end of the scale, this is when we talk about introducing new mechanics, new movement tech, powers, attacks, going from being able to do a normal jump to doing a double jump, into a double jump, spin jump, infinite jump, air dash into a teleport, into a ground stomp to repel you up, to then do another air dash, uppercut to make it over that ledge. But there is a tendency among developers, especially when we look at the metroidvania side of things, where they will purposely hide the good stuff. And I made a video about this a few months ago, that there's this idea or this tendency to purposely make your game worse or knowingly have pain points to only introduce that solution 30 minutes down the line, hour, 5 hours, whatever. And this is definitely I think an evolution or a branch off of idle design. As we've said before, many idle games are built on that first run, that first play before you prestige, to be ridiculously annoying. It takes a long time to get to your first prestige in a game like Cookie Clicker or Idle Clicker or any kind of clicker that you can imagine. And then what happens is we remove those annoyances. We make it faster and better. And instead of taking 48 hours, it takes 28, and then 16, and 5, and 2, and maybe even just 20 seconds at some point. But the problem is that when the player doesn't know that there's a fix or that there's going to be something better coming down the line, they're not going to stick around. And even in amazing games, there are plenty of examples of people who have left long before they even manage to even get things going. Hollow Knight is a really good example. Hollow Knight may be one of the most celebrated Metroidvanias of the past decade, but it is terrible when it comes to churn rates, losing a lot of its player base within an hour of playing it. A lot of people quit before they even got the ability to double jump in that game. And I can tell you very easily some of the things that stop people from enjoying it. They did not like that map system. They may not even made it to the point where you got an auto map or the ability to get the trinket to show your position on the map. And this is a common issue that I see from developers who focus on massive progression marks or massive progression gains over the course of playing. That if you have something that is going to make your game legitimately better and different, and more importantly, it is something that is attached to your core gameplay loop, the longer you kind of hide that ball, the worse your experience is going to be. Because this is another big point about Metroidvania design games that do this. Oftentimes, they focus on a non-linear progression. Do you want to go here, then there, then down here, then over there, and then over here? Well, if you miss that major point, that major upgrade, guess what will happen? You're going to be left wandering around feeling, why does this feel sluggish? Why am I not able to jump? And this is again why a good pacing or good structure matters. There's another point when we talk about Metroidvania design or things like this, where developers will tend to be very fast and loose in terms of the structure of their game. So it's kind of like, let's say we have 7 levels. Level 1, you unlock double jump. Level 2, you unlock nothing. Level 3, you unlock air dash. Level 4, nothing. Level 5, nothing. Level 6, nothing. Level 7, you get a triple jump. Now, the problem is that you want to provide some semblance of a structure to your game when it comes to how someone's going to move through it. This is something that we've talked about a lot when it comes to Procgen and even just in linear games. What is it like to play through your game? What does one run of your game look like? And it's why when we talk about good Procgen, there has to be a structure to your game. What does a biome look like? What does level 1 of your Procgen game going to have? A good example of this comes from a robot named Fight. When I interviewed the developer a few weeks ago, we talked about this challenge of properly setting up the structure of the game. So you start up here at biome 1, you go 2, 3, and then I think it's like 4, 5, and then you go back up. I may be throwing an extra biome in. But what he had to do was figure out what is going to happen progression-wise over the course of playing my game. And this is not, again, about just forcing or making it very linear. It's not about having at the very start of your game a giant list that says, you will unlock double jump, a spin jump, a grapple, an air dash. But what you want to do, and it's good like kind of game design psychology in this respect, is you want the player to infer that there is a plan, that there is a structure to your game. And this is why many procedurally generated titles will have kind of the bread and butter, or things that will always show up in each area. In a floor and biome of Isaac, I will always find a shop, a treasure chest, a boss fight. What's going to be in those 3 specific points? No one knows. But they know that the event is there. They know to expect it. And this is what you need to do when it comes to good structure in your game. If your game is made up of 5 biomes, 8 biomes, 3 stages, whatever, you want to give the player, or you want them to infer what to expect down the line. And oftentimes in a lot of metroidvania and non-linear games, they don't do that. In the game Rusted Moss that we were playing on stream, probably by the time you're still watching this, or it could be over by the time you're watching this video, each one of those biomes, they do have a kind of progression key or the MacGuffin you need. But very few of them actually have an upgrade to your character or to your movement tech. And there's this common tendency in a lot of these games I've noticed where the major upgrades, the oh my god, now my game is so much more better upgrades, I tend to just stumble upon them without even realizing it. Like, there's not even any sense of the level design guiding the player to this big deal. This was a big point that I ran into with Astalon. That was the Lost Vikings meets Metroidvania game, where the idea is that you're swapping between different characters, each with their own different jump abilities, attacks, and so on. So, in the beginning of the game, you have to return to the save point each time you want to swap characters. It's very cumbersome, it's annoying, it pads out the game, it's not fun to play the game like that. So, the developers have an item that lets you just auto-swap on command. But here's the problem. It is hidden off in kind of like a corner of the map. Again, there's no tells, there's no environmental design or anything to let the player know that, hey, this thing that's annoying, we have a solution, it's over there, go get it. Instead, what ends up happening is that people aren't going to assume you have a fix for it. They're going to assume that you made this annoying on purpose, or maybe you screwed up. And guess what? They're going to quit. And when I found the upgrade in Astalon, it's like, oh my god, this game is really great now. But you see, with it being non-linear, means that the amount of time it takes for someone to get it is very variable. Someone could find it in 30 minutes of play. Someone could maybe find it 2 hours of play. Someone else could find it in 0 hours and 0 minutes of play because they load up the game, felt that was how the game was going to play, and then said nope, and they left and refunded the title. And this is why you need to be very careful in terms of how you properly set up the pacing and structure of your game when you have major points or major pain points that are built into the design at the start. And it's why I've said in the past that for good UI UX, you don't want those elements to linger. And more importantly, if there is something that is so mission critical, so vitally important that it's going to change how someone plays your game, you want to guide the player to that as quickly as you can. And as I said a few minutes ago, when it comes to good pacing and structure, it's why in every biome, in every area, you want to give the player something good, even if it's not that huge of a deal. Hey, your shot's been upgraded. You can now jump a little bit higher. Maybe you can now shoot a missile or have a power bomb. Because the reason why this stuff matters is that it's giving the player information that, hey, this game is introducing cool stuff. There's something new in Zone 2. So when we get to Zone 3, I'm going to assume there's something great there. And more importantly, it educates the player to explore the map. Because the very worst thing you could possibly do is, let's say the player starts right here, and there is a mission critical upgrade right over there. And they go that away. Completely miss it, completely disregard it, and now they're wondering, why can't I play this game? And it sounds like a joke, I know, to some of you watching this, but again, we have seen the churn rates of games that take too long and they don't have a good structure to their design to guide the player and inform them that there is an out, that there are solutions coming. And that's another really big point. You want the player to assume that there is a solution. Another big aspect of games, that, especially those that are reflex-based or have kind of the player's progression and then items and upgrades, it can be very hard sometimes to determine, am I doing this right and I'm just not having the right upgrades for it? Or do I have the right upgrades, but something's not right or I'm not doing it properly? This was some of the things we talked about with the designer Endo on one of our discussions, where we brought up this idea of, if you're going to require the player to have an upgrade, to have some kind of a means of getting across, make the less attempt, or one that's not going to work, brutally apparent. So if the ledge is over here, and using all my skill, all my mastery, my jump ends up here, I'm going to know there is no way in heck I am getting there without an upgrade. What you don't want to do is, if the ledge is right here, and with all my skill and power, I make it there. Because now I'm thinking, well, this must be the intended way. Look how close I am. So I'm going to keep trying and get frustrated, even though I may need, a double jump, or super hang, or mega grapple, or whatever you want to call it. And it's why, again, to begin to wrap things up, when it comes to good structure and good pacing in your game, you want to have a game plan for how someone is going to play through your title. Even if your game is open-ended or procedurally generated, you should know, what does the path through of my game look like? You will always have someone who is just going to disregard all the hints, all the clues, and just, they're wandering off that way, and you can try and stop them. But for the general consumer, you want to give them an idea that there's a carrot at the end of that stick. And there's always going to be something new. There's going to be that new power, that new upgrade. And again, it doesn't have to be, every one of these doesn't have to be a game-breaking thing. You just want to educate the player as to the general structure of your game. Every world has a boss fight. Every world has some kind of power-up or new ability. It doesn't have to be a huge thing. You just want them to understand that I'm in a new biome now. There must be something good here. There must be a boss fight somewhere there. A lot of Metroidvania designs I've noticed lately, they will have these kinds of transitionary biomes, where it's like, here's the major biome, here's another major biome, and then there's a biome that runs between them that is just there to serve as added time. There's no upgrades, there's no bosses, there might even be like minor collectibles. It's just there to make the world feel bigger. And I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. And that's actually a good question for those of you watching. What do you think about that kind of world design? When you purposely build areas that only serve to connect the major or the important areas from one another. Honestly, I think I prefer the Dark Souls approach, where within each biome, there is that transitionary area, that thing that's going to connect to the biome over there, or the biome down there. And you're not just designing areas just for the sake of extending the time. And that was one of the points I brought when we last spoke about Metroidvania. That if you're going to have like a fast travel or a teleport power, get that thing unlocked as soon as you can. Especially if you have fast travel points that are very far apart. So it's like, there's a fast travel point right here on the map, there's one up here, one over there, one somewhere over here, and it's like a 10 to 20 minute walk between them. Because if you wait too long to introduce that to the player, again, you know what's going to happen. They're going to think, well, I'm going to have to spend so much annoying time dealing with a fast travel system, and it just feels very slow and annoying. I'm not going to enjoy that. So let me have that ability to do like an instant fast travel. Or in a grind, I think that was the name of the game's grind's case, you just allow the player to teleport to save points. Because like we've said, the player is going to be taking a lot of information about how your game is played, what the structure of it, within the first 10 to 20 minutes of playing it. And then in that 10 to 20 minute structure, if there are things that are annoying, if they're seeing something that is frustrating them minute one, even if you fix that by the end of the first hour, they're not going to assume that. They're going to assume that's how your game is going to be played for the entirety of its experience. And it's again, oftentimes why so many people will churn out titles within the first 15 to 30 minutes of play. And it is a shame because of that. Even with like amazing games like Hollow Knight, you want the player to feel like they're making progress. This is something I spoke about with Tomo on several occasions. Good progression is that the player feels like, okay, I may be stuck here, but very quickly I'm now there. And now a little bit later, I'm here. And now I just beat that boss, I got a new power, moving around I got a health upgrade, a new item. So it's not this case. You want to avoid that sense of peaks and valleys, where it's like, I start the game, I get nothing, 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 double jump, nothing, 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 grapple upgrade. Because a lot of people are not going to deal with frustrating elements even if you have that solution. And it's why, again, that there's a greater talk we need to have about kind of video game psychology and manipulating the player or trying to get them to do what you want them to do, even if they don't know about it. But with everything said, to wrap things up, pacing and structure are vitally important, whether your game is linear, non-linear, Procgen, normal gen, hand gen, any other generations that you can think of. You want to be able to get in the player's mind and figure out what are they going to be doing. And if you do have any elements that are annoying or frustrating or pain points, especially if they're being pointed out by playtesters, figure out how to mitigate or remove them as quickly as you can. Something like being able to view the map or being able to fast travel. That's not something that should take 5 to 10 hours to unlock in your game. That's not even the core gameplay loop of your title. And remember, good UX design is about removing any pain points that will get in the way of someone experiencing your core gameplay loop. And if you leave those in, whether it's for 5 hours, 1 hour, 20 minutes, you are burning through a lot of the player's interests. And while there will always be people who they will stick it out, they will play through that game all the way through with all the pain points and all the frustrations, that's only a subset of your consumer base. No game wants to see their achievement rates go from 100 to 27 within 30 minutes of play. And again, I know some of you may think I'm joking about that, but no, that is not a joke. I've seen games that within 20 minutes, they lose that amount of their consumer base. And I can tell you, they are not going to come back to give your game a second chance or give your next game a first chance. So with that said, my question for those of you watching this, or the second question, can you think of games that did a really great job of structuring the pacing of them, that you always feel like something good is coming, that there is always going to be that carrot at the end of the stick? Let me know in the comments down below. Do all the YouTubing stuff people tell you to do? Be sure to visit our Discord and Patreon and come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games.